This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Workday Government. On this edition of FedGov Today, the Commerce Department goes all in on enterprise cloud, the workforce secret sauce for managing AI, and 3 new contracting experts at the Interior Department aren't people. Welcome to FedGov Today in Washington, D.C. and around the world on the American Forces Network. I'm Francis Rose. A 10-year cloud computing contract that could be worth more than $4 billion is coming from the Commerce Department. The agency's SAM.gov listing for the contract says, quote, only original equipment manufacturers acting as the cloud service provider will be eligible for the award. Brian Epley is the Chief Information Officer at the Commerce Department. Brian, welcome. It's great to see you again. Sure. Tell me about the strategy for this, how you developed it, and why you're doing it the way that you're doing.
Sure. Thank you, Francis. Great to see you. The backdrop on this is NOAA needed a massive intake of infrastructure cloud to support their operational resilience, specifically in national weather, as one example. And they really needed to get direct to the OEMs. And so when they approached me, I said, this is a great idea. Not only is it necessary for NOAA's mission, but it's necessary for the rest of the mission across commerce and, frankly, across the federal government. And so it moved quickly from just a review and approval of a contract into how can we advance this. The backdrop is we had a contract that was in a little bit of trouble. And so we used that risk to not only accelerate this, but I wanted to understand, I didn't want to miss the opportunity in terms of the big picture. So I mustered a team, asked NOAA to co-lead this effort. We pulled in all of the other bureaus across commerce and said, what are those cloud requirements? It was hard to unpack at first because when you think of cloud, the 3 main pillars or components are, compute and utility, and then labor and services. We wanted just to focus on the infrastructure piece because we needed to get that bedrock, that foundation set correctly. And so that was the focus. It was a big shift, and it supported one of the big initiatives that I've been pushing, and that's One Commerce. And so NOAA was the co-lead. You'll see on SAM.gov that there are the points of contact, but there's a huge backdrop of commerce behind that. You mentioned the value and this being a 10-year window. A lot's going to happen in there, but I want you to understand why we did this. Not only did we need this to support the operational resilience of NOAA's mission, we needed this to be able to scale. And as you know, GSA is cutting a lot of OneGov deals out there, so why reinvent the wheel? So we partnered with GSA and said, how can we solve this quickly to meet the mission needs, but also so that it's got that scalability? They were great partners, and they said, the best vehicle is that GSA multi-award schedule, so we were able to compete it. That presents another opportunity, and that's that it's not just one OEM, it's all of them. Mm-hmm. Now, all of the OEMs weren't available when we went through this initial pursuit, but as you know, the industry partners are critical to our mission, and so they're clamoring to get into that space.
Take me back to those original conversations with not just NOAA, but the other bureaus inside the department. How much resistance did you run into from people who wanted to do their own thing? That's something that people talk about all the time, all across the federal government, not just at your agency.
That's a great question. So as you can imagine, it wasn't so much resistance. I think it's the friction, the tense that we get, and I put myself in the shoes of any other leader, a bureau, or even another department or agency, because it feels like we're losing control. But the reason I wanted NOAA to co-lead this is I wanted them to be front and center. I wanted them to have, and it's important that I say co-lead, I wanted the rest of the stakeholders to have a voice for their equities in this space. And that flipped the script from, as you say, resistance or friction into something that they could really lean into and see, oh, now I'm going to realize the value of this. And even though it's not their individual contract, they can see their work, their requirements in the overall One Commerce requirements.
What's the difference between having a bureau co-lead it, as you've described it, and having them act as a shared service provider to the rest of the organization?
I'm going to unpack that slightly different, because I think that the first question you asked is, each in my world at Commerce, each of the bureaus is a shared service provider for their independent agency. And what we need to do was look at this through a One Commerce enterprise lens. So that's one big pivot or change. But I think that they also needed to realize, by going direct, we needed to create a marketplace that was unified for each of those agencies, each of our bureaus. So one bureau might be interested in a particular cloud service provider, and their approach may be slightly different than another bureau. But we needed to make this streamlined so that it was consistent every time. Otherwise, we fall back to the reality of 12 or 13 different contracts, and they're done similarly but not consistently, and that erodes the potential benefit and value of an enterprise BPA.
Is that consistency one of the reasons too that you went the OEM route instead of wanting to work through resellers?
I think that's a good question and a key reason why we went that direction. But I also want to speak to the other major pillars, labor and services. We value, and our partners in the value add resellers and the system integrators, we can't live without them. They're critical to our mission. What we're focused on, and I said it earlier, it's really about the bedrock of that utility, the compute piece. We need to get that right so that we can actually build on that. But what I want to highlight is it doesn't matter which pillar we're talking about, whether it's the infrastructure, labor, or services, we're bringing our mission closer to industry. That partnership is what's going to accelerate the innovation that we require to have that mission impact.
Nick Wakeman in Washington Technology wrote about this recently. He wrote, "In many ways, Commerce is following a strategy similar to the Defense Department and its Joint Warfighter Cloud Capability Vehicle with AWS, Microsoft, Oracle, and Google Cloud. Organizations inside the department can let contracts against this." Is that how it is going to work in your organization?
Not necessarily today, but that's the vision. And so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. We looked across the aisle and said, where else could we do this? Do we have to do this, or can we just consume off of something else? So we borrowed some of the strategy that was utilized in that space. We talked to other partners. I think the CIO community that we're facing today, we're all facing many of the same challenges. And so not only am I solving this for One Commerce, I'm leveraging One Gov. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at vehicles, we're looking at strategies and tactics to advance that. So yes, the long term is to meet that.
What would you advise a fellow CIO who is just starting this and has a number of organizations inside her or his operation like you do, who may be going in different directions, very diverse mission sets and so on, who want to move to a vehicle like you're doing here?
I think you have to look outside and understand what exists today and how your mission requirements might align to that. I'm not suggesting there's a one size fits all. That's not the answer. But what I am suggesting is that you can cherry pick some of the solutions that are already out there. I would work with industry direct. We released a draft RFQ. We didn't have time, but we wanted to get an RFI. We wanted to get that feedback loop. So it's across the CIO, that peer community. You have to partner with your CFOs. You have to partner with your procurement executives. It's one fight, one team that's got to get after it.
What did you learn in this process that maybe you would have done differently if you knew it when you started?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. What did I learn that I would have done differently? I don't know that we ever get that opportunity. This was presented, and it's what we did in the moment that made the difference. Now, in hindsight, not necessarily with a focus on cloud, it has influenced what we're doing in the AI front. Mm-hmm. It is influencing what we're doing on the quantum front. We're applying that One Commerce, One Gov approach to these things. But I think what it's done is it's opened our eyes to figure out what's the art of the possible in these other arenas.
You anticipated my next question, which is what'd you learn from this that you can apply to other areas that you're going to move forward in?
So I mentioned, AI.
Mm-hmm.
Let me talk a little bit about that. And the context there is, in response to the new executive orders, we had to complete AI use case inventory. So I stood up an integrated product team that was represented by all of the bureaus in commerce. But I also reached across the aisle to my peer CIOs. What are you doing? How are you solving this? We don't need to repeat. We don't need to reinvent these things. But what I want to highlight is that IPT construct is what will be reapplied in other areas. And the difference there is now all of the bureaus not only have use cases, but we're finding that we have more in common, those similarities. Mm-hmm. And so how many chatbots do you need? How many APIs do you need? We partnered with GSA, and we were the first department or agency to actually implement USAI. Why did we do that? Because the data, the use case inventory that we pulled through that IPT told us so. And rather than try and invest in one or two of the top 2 AI models, by partnering with GSA, we got access to all of the top models. And so that's another way where we flipped the script and benefited from what we learned from the cloud initiative.
A lot more I'd love to chat about, but we're out of time. It's great to have you here, Brian. Thanks for joining me. You can read more about the cloud procurement and the other items that Brian discussed on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the workforce secret sauce for managing AI. FedGov Today continues in a moment.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems, streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation, we drive it. Maximus.
Welcome back. More than 100,000 AI agents are on duty at the Pentagon now through the department's GenAI.mil platform. Breaking Defense reports some of the most popular uses for the agents include drafting after-action reports and analysis of data and images. Matthew Cornelius is Managing Director for Federal Industry at Workday Government. He's a former cybersecurity official at the Office of Management and Budget and GSA. Matthew, welcome. It's great to see you again. You heard Brian Epley talking about using AI and figuring out how it's going to work. We'll learn more later in the program from Andrea Brandon at Interior. What's the landscape look like now, and how is it impacting the way that people actually do the work on a day-to-day basis, in your view?
Thanks, Francis. It's great to be back. It's not just how the people are doing work, but it's how the actual agents are doing work. It's funny that you brought up that piece about the after-action reports. When I was at GSA, I had an army of contractors that would follow me around from meeting to meeting to do PowerPoint slides and to write notes. And now you've got autonomous agents that are doing that. And as you see the explosion both in the Department of Defense, as you mentioned, and then with the growth in the AI use cases sort of government-wide, what you're seeing is it's not just about AI expansion and AI adoption, but you've got to treat those agents the same way you would treat your employees, right? They need access to the right data. They need the right cybersecurity controls. They need to know policies. They need training, right? So the way we think about it at Workday is it shouldn't really matter to you as a leader if it's a human being that's doing the work or an AI agent that's doing the work, so long as they've got the right governance, the right control, the right performance, the right data, and the right focus on mission to actually achieve whatever outcome you want that person or that agent to do.
It strikes me that there might be as much a nomenclature issue here as a technology or a governance issue. Just the fact that I have to make sure that Matthew's agent has the same access to information and so on as Matthew does. Am I on the right track there?
I think that's true, and you also have to make sure they don't have access to the data or the information that they don't need access to, right? And so one of the more interesting signs that we're seeing is when you think about talent, when you think about the workforce, right? If you look back 2 or 3 years, if you thought about hiring AI talent into government, you were writing position descriptions or job classifications, and you were trying to find 5 or 10 or 15 people who were going to be your AI people sitting in that agency. And now every job description you're seeing coming out, every PD that's getting classified, there's all a level of AI competence there. And what that means is that federal leaders all the way at the policy level, from the Office of Personnel Management down to the operational level, like you heard Brian talk about recently, they know that AI skills and AI capabilities are inherent for any employee that's coming in. So deploying the agents and having them do work, that's the easy part. But how are humans still going to be making the right decisions to achieve mission outcomes? How do they understand the models? How do they train them better? It's no different than training a GS7 to take them all the way up to a 15. You've got to take that model and give it good instructions, give it good feedback, prompt it effectively so that it can actually do what you need it to do, because otherwise you're going to get poor performance, and that's no different than poor performance if you have a young employee that's not taking direction or not sure of what they need to do.
Is this the same evolution that we saw in the cybersecurity community? I'm going to guess 12 to 15 years ago, where people thought there was a cyber cohort of people that worked for the agency, and it turned out the evolution was everybody's involved with cybersecurity because everybody is a potential possibility for a threat landscape.
It is similar, and I think it goes back to just something that we've seen across administrations from Trump 1 to Biden and now Trump 2. Skills-based hiring is real, and it's not just skills-based hiring, it's skills-based management of the workforce, right? What we've seen with a lot of our customers, a lot of agencies that we talk to on a day-to-day basis, when they were going through the workforce changes that were happening, especially a lot in early 2025, you've got these new political folks that are coming in saying, well, where are your people, who's remote working, who can do this, like what are probationary employees, and no one knew. Nobody had that data. They were in spreadsheets all over the place or in all these legacy systems that only one or two people knew about. So you can't do skills-based management, you can't do merit-based hiring, you can't do performance in the way that this administration's trying to do unless you can actually understand the skills of the workforce. And so just because you're an 1102, there's all different levels of IT specialists. I was one when I was in the government, and I was a drama major in undergrad, right? So anybody can do this stuff. Well, not anybody, but a lot of people can do it. But there's all different flavors. And so what you're seeing, whether it's cyber, whether it's AI, whether it's acquisition, whether it's mission-based work like fighting wildfires or doing drug testing, you have to know what skills you're looking for. You have to be able to assess those skills fairly, because the assessment piece is also really critical. You can't take the old hiring model where you have to put in a 100-page resume and hit every word in a position description to show that you can do it. You got to show that these employees, and there's lots of people that do want to come into public service and do want to work for the government, you got to know that they're competent and capable and willing to perform. And so it's both understanding the skills base that you have, it's finding the gaps that you see and figuring out whether you're going to have that with a human or with AI. And then no matter what the HR action you're taking, you got to make sure that you're getting the right people, the right bots that are getting access to the right information and achieving those mission outcomes.
Matthew, it's always great to have you on the program. Thanks for being here today.
Went too quickly. Thanks, Francis.
You can read more about AI and the workforce on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, 3 new contracting experts at the Interior Department aren't people. FedGov Today continues in just a moment.
Able to really concentrate on the mission and how do they add value from a CFO perspective. And so EY, we have really taken this sort of blended approach around how we work with agencies by utilizing some of our AI tools. We have also developed data analytics solutions, right, to embed in agencies as well. And so whether it's our LEA tool, which is our leadership insights analytics, data analytics, which is sort of an enterprise-wide data transformation tool. We have our public funds management solution, which is really a blockchain. We're very excited, a blockchain solution that allows us to trace funds across the organization.
Welcome back. Bob, Bobby, and Oz are 3 of the newest contracting experts at the Interior Department, but they're not people, they're bots. Andrea Brandon is Deputy Assistant Secretary for Budget, Finance, Grants, and Acquisitions at Interior. Andrea, welcome. It's great to have you on the program again. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Tell me about Bob, Bobby, and Oz. The names are cool. What are they doing to work with or for your contracting workforce?
So basically, these are our robotics process automation projects. They're bots. We give each of our bots a name because it helps to personalize it to our workforce. They actually come up with the names themselves. So again, that helps with the culture of acceptance of the bots. And so Bobby is our most, Bob the Closer is our most, because we have one called Bobby too.
Yes,
so I don't
that's
want
right.
to, yeah. So
can mix them up very
yeah,
easily.
exactly. Bob the Closer is our most famous bot, and he does acquisition closeouts. We've had him for a couple of years now, and he's won 3 awards. So he's pretty famous at this point.
Yes.
But he's closed out more than 100,000 acquisitions contracts, and he's also he can actually close out the contracts at 29 per hour, so that's way more than what a human can actually close out. And he saved us more than $29 million. So it's a lot moving forward, and we are very much excited about Bob the Closer. Moving forward to Oz the Bot, which is our Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization Bot. And basically, we have to comply with the Small Business Administration's goaling requirements for awarding contracts to small businesses. It can be pretty tedious trying to get the data for how many contracts that we currently have awarded each month, and then how many of them are going out to small businesses businesses, et cetera. So we were initially doing that by hand, manually, and it was taking days to gain that data. Now we have OzDBot that can give us that data in real time. So basically, we have seen a 1,396% increase in recency data with getting the information so that we can award more small business and meet our goal and requirements for the Small Business Administration. And then we have Bobby, the modifier.
He's younger, it sounds
Yeah, he
like.
is younger.
Bob is more a veteran,
Yeah,
an older
he's the
guy.
senior.
Yeah,
Bob
that's right.
is senior. Bobby's junior.
Yeah.
So Bobby is our bot that does contract modifications for clauses and administrative modifications and so forth. And we can use Bobby to actually put a new clause in a contract instantaneously. So we can put a clause in thousands of contracts instantaneously through Bobby, the modifier. So we're definitely going gung-ho with our bots, our RPA. Our workforce loves it because it frees them up to do more detailed work, more like actually monitoring and producing oversight over the actual contract projects. So we can make sure we're not going overspend, the contractors are on target to meeting the deliverables that they should be meeting and so forth. So it allows us more time to actually do monitoring and oversight. So we're excited. We have more bots, but those are the three main ones in the acquisition realm.
How are you looking at what other areas of specialty that bots might work for moving forward?
That's a great question. So basically, acquisitions and grants management are very similar in the type of role and responsibility and business process. So once we found out Bob could do thousands of contract closeouts, we have a similar situation on the grant side where we need to close out the grants. So we're actually working, we're modifying the code, if you will, for Bob. Maybe we'll call her Bobette, I don't know, for grants, but they'll figure out the name.
Roberta might be your choice.
Roberta could be good. Yeah.
That's right.
So we're looking at actually starting same thing with grants management closing out the grant projects and using bots to do that. And so that's the pilot that we're working on for now. But we look across the life cycle of the current bots that we have, because we have a fleet management bot. We have also a financial assistance bot that can do assistance listings for the catalog of federal domestic assistance. And so that bot, so we're looking at where in the life cycle that has repetition in some of the other lines of business that are under my purview, where we can put a bot in place that can save us like hours and hours of work being done, or even money, cost avoidance, et cetera. So that's how we kind of take a look at it. We have our information technology roadmaps. Everybody says, it's that time of year, let's whip out the roadmaps and see what we accomplished from the roadmap from last year, and let's see what we want to add for this year. So
I note that these bots are based on robotic process automation technology, as you mentioned earlier. What did you learn from that will apply to what you do with artificial intelligence moving forward?
Okay, so I'll tell you a quick story, how we learned something from that, or how I learned something from that. So I was working in another federal agency prior to starting with the Department of the Interior. And in that federal agency, we were using artificial intelligence. But I couldn't get the staff to really grab a hold of robotics process automation. They just did not want to do it. Okay, I shipped over to the Department of Interior in March of 2019, and I thought they were going to be gung-ho to do the artificial intelligence, and they were basically like, nope. We would rather do robotics process automation. So one of the key things I learned is you need to look at what the culture is in the agency. And each agency like ours has multiple bureaus as well. Look at what the culture is in the bureaus, because there are stakeholders as well. And you have to do an assessment of the culture to see, are they ready to take on artificial intelligence? After we did the robotics process automation and they saw how successful it was and that it didn't replace them, then they became gung-ho about doing artificial intelligence, because they realized it's going to be like an assistant. It's not going to replace them. AI can actually do more things than what the bots can do. And so now they're very gung-ho. We have many different use cases and pilots going on with regard to artificial intelligence. But I would say you really need to look at the culture to make a determination. Is the culture of the organization ready to start taking on artificial intelligence?
What are the best ways that you evaluate that culture, that you stay connected with people at headquarters headquarters when you have an organization like Interior that is spread out all over the entire country?
So we have an executive steering committee that does it looks at all of our IT projects through our business integration office. And the executive steering committee is made up of members from all of the bureaus, is made up from members of all of the different lines of business, whether it's grants, finance, budget, human resources, et cetera. The information technology office, so people from our CIO office. And we constantly meet on a monthly basis to not only discuss the current IT projects that we have that are ongoing for the department, because we have a lot of integrated information technology for our finance system, our grant system, our contract system, et cetera. But we have discussions about up and coming future projects with artificial intelligence or robotics, process automation, or blockchain, distributed ledger technology, or virtual augmented reality. We run it through our integrated project team and our executive steering committee, and they give us the feedback, the stakeholder feedback. And sometimes we have to actually go outside of the department to our other stakeholders, which are the grantees or the vendors. And so our executive steering committee members reach out to those stakeholders as well, and then bring the feedback back into the department so that we can gather their information and make sure we're on the right track with regard to successfully implementing the benefits or if it's a vendor, so that they can provide the appropriate services back to the department. But if it's a grant, so that they can successfully implement the benefits to their sub-recipients or the recipients that are receiving the grants. So we have like a lot of different stakeholder groups within the department, but one big overarching executive steering committee that those stakeholder groups report back to. And then, of course, our executive steering committee reports back up to our upper leadership, right? Because nothing's going anywhere if we don't have buy-in from our upper leadership, and we need to make sure that we're addressing the true mission of the department. So we're making sure we're staying on target with the mission of the department and with the mission of what our president wants done. So we have really good communication.
It's great to have you here, Andrea. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time. You can read more about everything that Andrea and I talked about on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment.
The importance of ever-changing policy in healthcare delivery, whether they're alternate payment models that are being constructed or ways that we focus our healthcare system presently on trying to identify areas of fraud and abuse and so forth.
We always ask the question, do I need to collect the PII at a PHI? If I don't need to collect it, I don't collect it. If it is required, then that's the second part of the question comes up. Okay, now I have to
a week to process some of the claims, and now they can do 700 of the claims in a day.
Wow.
So that's what you're starting to get into with using AI, and it's very, even at that administrative level.
Welcome back. Maven's Smart System will become a program of record at the Pentagon by the end of this fiscal year, according to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Steve Feinberg. Two former mission owners of Maven, former JAKE Director Jack Shanahan and former NGA Director Trey Whitworth, tell you how Maven got here and what's ahead on the FedGov Today podcast this week. You get the FedGov Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your shows. And you can always listen on demand at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today TV is back next Sunday morning at 10 in Washington and on YouTube, and all weekend long on the American Forces Network. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.